Okay. I will present to you my project. So I'm Moritz. I will present to you my project, the Palais Ortolan, and this is the blog of it. And Palais Ortolan is the name of the restaurant that Lenny Belardo opened up after leaving the Vatican, and where he serves the ortolan, the bird that brings with it the myth of the whole world to take, a meal originally reserved for kings. And it's that myth that the house wants to get to the ground of, and that the house wants to uncover and reveal. And it even goes as far as to release a cookbook containing in it everything that happens in the build-up of the ortolan. And I will start by showing you the trailer of that cookbook.
Si ou t'as senti ou tout dit, oh, continue tout ni. Sonoli pate ni pate, 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 sonoli pate ni pate.
After my first Buckman novice report, stimulating reminder of our power over life and death.
In this cookbook, next to the recipes, the house includes a Michelin Guide review written on the restaurant and a letter from Lenny Belardo, the cook, back to the Vatican. And I will start by reading the review. The day has come. I had gotten a reservation at the restaurant that is most mysterious to the world. It is for that mystery that we decided to make an exception in the Michelin Guide policy of reviewing the restaurant with only two inspectors, as the cook, Lenny Belardo, only allows one single diner per night to enter his premises. What morbid curiosity! The whole world is dying of curiosity. We all want to see that which is hidden. We all want to stare the forbidden in the face. I turn the corner of Kundmangasse, and it appears in front of me. A dark place, and the veil in front. The flat veil is always bright. On it, the world of the Palais casts a shadow. Light creates a shaded area. My knowledge is limited to these shadows. The silhouettes of the cooks, the moving leaves of the trees, and the birds, the ortolan. Forms, lights, shadows, and colors have been mixed by the meeting of humans, the grand narrative of time and the trip around the world, a world for me to experience and transcend as I will eat the ortolan tonight. I hear the murmur of honeybees, the varied songs of many birds, the tremendous flurry calling of slaves and butlers, and the pandemonium among the cooks, shaping all on one great tune with bees, insects, flowers, and trees. Trembling with anticipation, I'm welcomed at the gate by a man of stained white clothes, ushering me in. I'm handed a drink in which, floating on the surface of the freshly poured Armagnac, I find a small feather. I feel a jet of warm air cascading over myself. The smells are simple: roasting beef, some wine, presumably some scent of baking bread. There are truffles, flowers, animals, fruits, grasses, and vegetables of the old world and new. An aviary, so to speak, for here we are in the land of birds, whereon for the force of their flying and the flapping of their wings, we cannot hear one another speak. I feel the softness in the depths of earth beneath my feet, roots growing into the ground as I am placed at the table with its round-stained lace tablecloth. Beneath fig trees, the first course is served. The truffle is nothing less than the agglomeration of elementary earth, the soil on which vegetation rests. I trace the nature of the soil on which depends the growth of plants. The figs, I hear the myth of the forest primeval providing a legendary site where we started our evolution towards civilization under the hidden guidance of divine providence. As the Ortolan sing above my head, we follow the ramp sinking down into the earth. As we move further down into the soil, I grasp a last sight at a single white plastic deck chair, sitting among the white clothes hung up to dry, dancing in the wind of the building's exhaust system. The ramp widens, and the concrete wall becomes an opening. Above the entrance, I see an array of slow-turning axial flow fans, whispering the scents of the kitchen into the atmosphere of the garden. Below, blurry traces of cooks rushing carts full of crates through the hall. The merchants dealing with cooks and about imports and sales settled over here. Selecting from the goods, traveling between continents and oceans, I hear the rustling of a cart pushed towards me by a cook. In the gray plastic crate on top, the next course is revealed to me. 5 tiny eggs that give rise to a new life, coated in the most exclusive spices, a movement of intercontinental exchange, constituting a world conspiring with new bodies. My neural network becomes one with the moving lights of the globe, strings of movement connected to the nodes that are the becoming of the Ortolan. I feel a special sense of power, of entitlement, as I walk through this gate and into the intestines, the inner workings of the building, as if I was some kind of mobster in the movies, walking through the dark and twisted hallways of the establishment he owns. I can't help but picture myself walking through the kitchen, experiencing all the scents, and maybe even hear an Ortolan squeal as it is drowned in Armagnac. We stand in front of the heavy chromed door. Open the wall, open the hymen, open the veil, death, cold, silence, as if we were 1,000 meters below the surface. This interior is not frozen music, but the arrested maelstrom. All the delicacies of the world, buried deep in blocks of ice, intact to all appearances. A catalogue of 10,000 stars, the noisy echo of 1,000 voices, the white light with 10 colors broken through the ice into the spectrum of the rainbow, absorbing it. And in the middle, the gleaming white table with a single frozen flower. I feel the crunch of fresh snow between my teeth and let the frozen history of the petal dissolve on my tongue. The element becomes a multitude of crossroads or a nexus of relations, a network of connections, of temporalities. In this closed cell, this temporary sepulchre, the myth of resurrection arise easily enough, locked in frozen layers. The universe of ancient creatures awaits another chance at life. I witness the transformation of substances and the dissolution of forms, such that my body or the room do not end at a precise point. There is nothing but the immense noise of the ocean. Chaos, noise, disorder, the base of existence. Noise spills out into space. In this collapse of the surface, the entire world loses its meaning. On the ceiling, the pipes inhaling the fumes, trying to make sense of the molecular essence of things, just as I am. And here I see him for the first time. Lenny Belardo, the mixer of meanings or voices. His arms raised like the conductor of an orchestra. Violent rhythms succeed a graceful andante. In the corners, the mist condenses, stains running down the walls, letting us perceive the boundaries of infinite space. On my spoon, I sense Aphrodite herself, rise, living, erect and naked, in the ruffles of the waves of the prebiotic soup, where things and organs are distinguished solely by gradients, migrations, zones of proximity. On the aluminum table, the reflection of the dancing mist as Lenny Bollardo conducts the heat. The raging noise of the heat, now distant. The only thing I feel is warmth in this windowless room in the heart of the building. The only light coming from the fireplace, the dancing flames projected onto the thick curtains, a shadow moving along the wall, carrying to my table a large silver platter, enhancing the reflection of the warm flames. The pig that picked the truffles, invariably impaled on a stick and roasted above fire. There I sense the ancient elemental things, the smell of meat as it is turned golden on the spit, the trees, the dry branches, the fire that brings men together. Intelligence enters into time, into the most rapid, lively and subtle shifts and fluctuations of turbulence, of the dancing flames, dancing the dance of the Ortolan. A single cut out of the apple of the pig's mouth, and I am back in the garden. The circle has closed, from growth to selection, to conservation, to dissolution, the eternal circulation of elements, the internal circulation of elements of bodies, passing from one form to the other, becoming, circulating around the central void, a void that in itself begins to take on color, for it is now time to go beyond, ready to be taken to another dimension, as Lenny enters the room, bearing in his hands 2 cast iron cocottes. Inside each, I assume a tiny, still sizzling, roasted bird, head, beak, and feet still attached, guts intact inside its plump little belly. I follow him on the staircase, moving upwards in this concealed atmosphere of the garden into the wide space, circumscribed, redoubled by a veil or a net, which is superimposed and gives it a volume. I understand that it is not the environment that is unknown, but rather my own body that becomes the point of interest of the room. Depicting the physical setting would be superfluous and divert the gaze away from the ritual action. Everything has been experienced, everything enjoyed to the full, the whole, but yet something remains missing. The bird that made men to kings and kings to gods. I lean forward as the host high pours from a bottle of Armagnac, dousing the Ortolan, then ignites it. The flames in the cocotte burn down and the Ortolan are distributed, one to me, one to him. Everyone at this table knows what to do and how to do it. Eager to indulge upon the bird, I look around the table for the napkin that is traditionally used to cover the faces and allows diners to savor the aromas and enjoy some privacy while devouring the bird or hide their indulgence from the eyes of God. But it is missing. Instead, Lenny looks me in my eyes affirmatively as to tell me to go ahead. Here I am in turn, the lost, at the pinnacle of power, at the very instant of committing the sin. An internal law rules up to a threshold after which the law is changed. The 5 senses stop at these thresholds, which it is now a question of going beyond the gates of hell or paradise, the horror, rather of those who detest experience, or the ecstasy of those who bathe in it. A quick exchange of sights, and I accept my dissolution in the burning plasma of matter. First comes the skin and the fat. It's hot, so hot that I'm drawing short, panicky, circular breaths, breathing around the Ortolan, shifting it gingerly around my mouth with my tongue so I don't burn myself, trying to hide my pain as I quickly glance up at Lenny, who sits staring calmly into the atmosphere. There's a vestigial flavor of Armagnac, low-hanging fumes of airborne fat particles, an intoxicating miasma. Time goes by, seconds, moments, I don't know. I bring my molars slowly down and through the bird's ribcage, and with a wet crunch, I'm rewarded with a scalding hot rush of burning fat and guts down my throat. Rarely have pain and delight combined so well. I'm giddily uncomfortable, waiting for the aromas to unfold, breathing in short, controlled gasps as I continue slowly, ever so slowly to chew. On the other side of the table, Lenny, unfazed as if he already knew what was coming. With every bite, as the thin bones and layers of fat, meat, skin, and organs compact in on themselves, there are dribbles of varied ancient flavors: figs, armagnac, dark flesh, slightly infused with a salty taste of my own blood, as my mouth is pricked by the sharp bones. Now for the last bite, the final step. Ready to transcend, I close my eyes. I swallow. I draw in the head and beak, which until now had been hanging from my lips, and crush a skull. I look at Lenny, the smoke from his cigarette flowing up into the sky, where just moments ago the cloth of the veil had covered us, now stands tall and judgingly the reflection of the moon mirrored in the facade of the neighboring building, bright, distorted, and fragmented by the still-lit windows. No language or sound, breezes, scents, shadows, songs, or shapes, but nothingness, mixed with the taste of my own blood. My face is frozen in terror. Without a word, I get up. On the opposite side of the roof, an elevator door opens behind the wide curtains waving in the night breeze, seeing myself cross the roof free in the air among the birds toward the elevator, taking the perspective of the neighboring building, disintegrated. With a dull clank, the doors close. I am alone, just me and my distorted image in the claustrophobic chrome walls. A blank look from my reflection to me, from the black box to its lit up threshold, from the hidden to the publicly posted, from the veil to the unveiling, from the entangled to taking apart, thread by thread. Madness surges upon me. The justice of this form of madness lies precisely in its capacity to unveil the truth. I have no option but to consider myself guilty. My torture had been my glory, my deliverance was my humiliation. Sitting on a rooftop on two plastic chairs among two greasy paper plates and a Cherry Coke Zero, Lenny Belardo unveiled the terminal truth of man. He showed how far he could be pushed by the passions, life and society, and everything that distanced him from a primitive nature that knew no madness. He has found a new way of judging life, of universalizing the condemnation of life by internalizing sin. But the bringer of sin and death necessarily also brought healing and life. Lenny, please forgive me for having left your restaurant without a word to you, for believing that carnal desires can be satisfied, for wanting to see what is behind the veil, for I came to the house that showed me the becoming of man, but wanted more. What strong and simple science will tell me the moment of denouement, of being stripped bare and untied, the moment of true casting off, and tell me to take nothing, to go completely naked, overwhelmed, burning, trembling in all my limbs, from this earth toward the void. For kings are not gods, they are but men. We're often enchanted by the siren's song. I see that it has not changed, and yet I see it differently. For I am free now, for I am lost now. Why write about an object that is disappearing, in a language that is dying? The five senses, still on the verge of departure towards another adventure, a ghost of the real, timidly described in a ghost of language. This is my confession. And now for the next excerpt in the cookbook, I'd like to read to you a letter written from the cook, Lenny Belardo, back to the Vatican. Dear Gutierrez, Please forgive me for having left the Vatican without a word to you. I just could not bear the thought anymore of remaining in this situation. I felt constrained by the system, the ubiquitous logics and regulations of economy, the legal system, the political system, the mass media, the church. Bound to a mortal body by bonds as strange as they are powerful, my care for the preservation of this body tempts the soul to think only of self and gives it an interest opposed to the general order of things, which is still capable of knowing and loving. The only place where I was at peace was in my garden, where I would watch the songbirds on their travel to Africa, so free and close to the sky, moving freely not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Angels flying in limpid air, leading us toward the other world. It was on one of those afternoons when I heard a bird chirping, singled out and trapped between the branches of a bush. The heaven had sent an Ortolan. I felt a youthful, holy, vital bliss in every vein and fiber newly glowing, but not in holy reverence to our Lord, but in lust. I could not let go of the images that arose in me and that came along with the thought of consuming the bird with all its feathers and freedom, the memory of an angel, or rather the becoming of a cosmos. Shocked with this sinful thought, it dawned on me. If moral precepts seem laughable, if the person preaching is irritating, for no one lives like an absolute angel, then vital experience matters eminently. The foolish life doesn't expose itself. The good one puts himself in danger. Like intelligence, when it wants to invent, it dives into this experience, into this adventure, exceptional and everyday, in which sin itself teaches us more than every other thing in the world. Religion connects the disconnected. This is the first definition of myth, but I will unbind the connected, unbind the priest more than he unbinds himself, unfasten the shackles, knots, and connections. It is in this way that in space and the world, atomism is profoundly irreligious, principles separated by the void. But if I disconnect the connected, then physics comes back down to religion. Then the atom is indeed the same word as templum, the temple, the Palais Ortolan, the restaurant I opened up, the distinction of local variety within the global space. For my getaway, I found the perfect site, bringing with it its own luggage like I am, yet willing to turn things around. The house that used to be an absolute identity, it was posited as such by reflection over against opposition and manifoldness, is now confronted with a new external world. With my restaurant, a new era has been opened. Object to the secrecy and myth unknown to him that I bring in form of the Ortolan, it has become a tracing element. It wants to reveal the network of unobservable relations in the restaurant, examining on what basis and under what conditions the myth succeeds. Working against the veil as to show the world what lies behind the net I put over the site to keep the birds from flying away. Trying to understand and signify the components of the myth. Trying to understand and signify the components of the myth, arranging them for the visitor to see. But the moment of exclusion of madness in the subject who seeks the truth is necessarily hidden from the point of view of the architectonics ordering of the system, because it's not their sum that produces the cooks and the ingredients, it's a trace of blood in their shirts. But even if we do not work together, we work between the two. It is that exact dissonance of understanding that reassures me in my decision to leave the Vatican. It affirms my freedom to move freely between the perfectly fixed logical structures the house presents, rising each day to the birds singing with the curtains, blowing through the windows, feeling warm steel under my feet as I walk along the facade of the kitchen and down into the garden, washing the stains of the clothes of yesterday in the pond of melted ice, hanging them out to dry in the warm atmosphere of the garden, blowing in the wind of the building's exhaust fans. Sitting in my deck chair among trees and clothes, watching the birds all day, contemplating, which one I will serve to my guests at night. Then, as the sun sets and the shadows start to illumine the veil, I descend into the building, only to rise again, moving beyond the realms of the house and onto the rooftop, where together with my guests I eat the ortolan, removing the ritual to remind ourselves of who we are, smoking my evening cigarette amongst the birds in the night sky, going to sleep to rise another day, being in this atmosphere I created. On another note, as my actions have drawn attention, the media, members of the public, and politicians have begun to pay attention. Recently, I've gotten a reservation from a name familiar to me from the Michelin guide. I will report to you as how it went as soon as possible. I hope you're doing well. Lenny. And now, for the last part of the book, after having presented all the texts found and all the recipes, the house concludes. Having considered all the information I gathered, having laid everything on the table, I have to come to the conclusion. All the ingredients, all the temperatures, the origins, the talks in front of the whale, the experience of the guest, Lenny's daily life, everything is there. Yet, something remains missing. For I do not know what causes the color to leave the guest's face, and what causes a new guest to arrive each night. But perhaps it's exactly my own unknowingness that binds the myth. Thus, this book is really only an album, Palais Ortolan.